Hi everyone. So today we're going to talk about finding empowerment from defects. So this is actually a really good topic, I think. I'm not sure if a lot of people actually talk about this at all. A lot of people probably hide this in business as well, because they feel it's a defect or they feel it's something bad in their life, but actually they've probably got a superpower in a way. And I would really probably want to try and go into this. I've got experience with it, John's got experience with it, and we can also just kind of talk about things in the wider industry as well, and definitely around this aspect of neurodiversity. So John, you want to kind of kick us off here and give us a bit of a background about finding empowerment from defects?
So I think when people build businesses, the idea is you hire staff that are perfect. They know the job, that's what it is. But as you say, we don't really talk about neurodiversity, so we don't really look at things like disabilities and how that can really play a hand in how it shapes somebody's thinking. So really, when you hire somebody, you hire their mind, you hire their ability to how they see the world and what they can bring into the company. And I don't know if you've seen or read the book Moneyball for that. So what was interesting about that film and that book was effectively they were looking for how would we build an elite team for a kind of cost-effective budget. All the best players are scooped up by the big teams. We don't have the budget to do that, so how do we do this? So what they were looking for was, we're looking for somebody that gets the best statistics in this one area. And they were kind of hiring against that, and they actually built a team that went all the way to the Super Bowl. They went right to the kind of end of the league. And it was basically built on this kind of dynamic team that when you look at them individually, you're thinking, that maybe isn't the strongest team you could kind of think. But it also plays into this idea of defects. And I think there's a lot of stigma around things like ADHD, autism, various other ones, Asperger's. But I actually think that a lot of business owners actually suffer from these traits. And I think we kind of know that, but very few people do talk about it. I'm dyslexic, and probably I'm on the spectrum to a certain degree in Asperger's or otherwise, because you're it makes you obsessive about things. So I recognise that myself where, I'm on record calling myself an addict, right? Yeah. So I'm not a drug addict, and I'm not an alcoholic or someone that suffers from that. But the reason why I abstain from alcohol and drugs and gambling is because I think I could total myself inside a week. I think I'd be dead inside 1 month because of that obsession for what it is. But you can actually use that, as you've said, like a superpower. So you could kind of put it to say, right, well, that obsession, I can put that towards a good purpose. So we were talking, me and you were talking probably I think a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago. I was talking about the grind, so you play these RPG games. Let's say it's something like Pokemon or something, you're walking back and forth in the grass, and you're basically leveling up through attrition, you're just continuously going at this, and it's grind, it's just classic grind. A lot of people would get bored of that and they would disengage and say, I just can't do that. I can't work till 1 a.m. I can't work 6 or 7 days a week. I'm burnt out. I need a holiday. I need a break. Whereas if there's somebody there that's willing to just sort of grind, they will edge out more often than they won't. But that probably is a neurological defect. It's probably not a normal way. And for years, I was actually burning out freelancers, and my wife was saying, you can't put your expectations on people because you're not normal, right? And I'm like, what the hell do you mean I'm not normal? And she's like, but it isn't, John. You're so driven. You're happy being a lecturer, a consultant, having 2 jobs. You wouldn't be content just having one business. You'd have to go, I want to acquire this, or here's an investor, here's that. There's always stuff going on because you like to have a busy mind. You like lots of irons in the fire. That suits your mentality. But to other people, it's no, I'm really regimented. I want one thing. This is my focus. But I do think that traits with myself have kind of led me into that, and it kind of makes me think how many other people are probably living with some form of either physical or mental disability, but actually it's making them probably stronger as an entrepreneur or as an employee. What's been your experience?
It's good that you said this. So you mentioned dyslexia there, and I can actually see that you're very creative and you've got lots of skills and you see the world in a different sort of way. And dyslexia, it plays a part that's kind of a little bit personal in my life. Is like my daughter's got dyslexia, and we always knew from a very, very young age that she had dyslexia, but they won't actually do any tests till they're like primary 4.
Yep.
So she suffered from primary 1, 2, 3, not really fully understanding herself, not fully seeing herself as like she was, stupid. As she actually said to me, she thought she was stupid. So she was like writing things down, and she wasn't able to like spell things correctly, or the letters were round the wrong way. She even speaks funnily as well. So like, for instance, it was like Imogen should be like imagine or something like that. So it's just like it's the way it's that like
a processing thing.
It would play in her head. I literally didn't fully know lots about dyslexia, and it was kind of Ashley, my wife, was like, yep, she's definitely got it. And I was so frustrated. I was like, we need to do something. And to the point that she was then getting seen as like, I think it was in primary 3, she was then getting seen as a bad girl in class and being disruptive. She was getting these like mad headaches when she was looking at the board. Like, I remember like I had to come pick her up from school, and when I picked her up, she was absolutely fine. I said, why'd you do that? So what it actually then turned out to be, so we went to like a optometrist. An optometrist, it's like a high optician, so they were able to kind of look into her eyes, and then they basically found that she's got is it visual disturbance or something like that. So if she's looking at a book, the letters in the book are moving, or they're falling off. Oh, that's absolutely so that's like, so when she was looking at the boards, all the words are falling off, and then it's giving her a headache and things are moving about. But when it all kind of came out, it was just, let's say she's got like a yellow overlay, so it's funny, if you actually put a yellow thing over it, she can see everything. It's like so weird, so it's just the thing that's in her eye. But she is like so creative. See her storytelling, see her imagination, it's amazing. I mean, I honestly do think she's going to be like massive, kind of like either write a book or write stories. She's going to be like massively like great at it. You can see so many skills. She's just different. She's such a caring person, and really kind of takes her time in certain aspects. But when I was talking to her about dyslexia, and I said, like, listen, I need to explain it to you, and it found like an animated video on YouTube to explain like dyslexia, and it was like a little girl, and she's doing her homework, and she's writing in the wee boy beside her, like he's done it, and it's like 20 minutes before, and she's like, I'm really struggling. Why is he doing it so much faster than me? And it's because like the school system and the way that people work, they're all teaching to a certain way. She genuinely needs to get taught in a different way. She needs to be used to her skills.
Yep.
Her skills has to be used in a different way and be taught a little bit different, and then she would be like super, super good. But I think we're all kind of stuck in this way of teaching. It's way back from the Victorian ages. We're still in the same way that we teach, and we're not. Well, it's kind of changing a little bit.
Yeah.
But when I showed her this, it was so sad. She was like that, so the wee girl was like, she thought she was stupid, and she was like, that's exactly what I've kind of felt, Dad. I felt I was stupid. I felt I just wasn't good enough, and she just didn't understand.
They don't know what it is. But then how would you know? So you're just thinking exactly what you say, like, there's 20 people in my class, well, probably classes are more like 30 now, but if you're looking at it, you're thinking, how come 29 people are getting this and I can't get it? And you will see it. You'll see it's like, I struggle with words. Like, so I was basically told in school, you wouldn't amount to nothing. Mm-hmm. You can't read, you can't spell, you can't write. Yeah. When I met my wife, I could barely sort of like form sort of like an essay or anything like that. Really struggled to read. Even, I wouldn't say basic books, but like kind of middling, moderate sort of difficulty books. And she said to me, like, I wish we had recorded how you read, how you wrote at that time, because see now jumping forward, so like what was your anniversary? You're 12 or 12. So the same with me, right? So we've been married for 12 years. So that basically means within the space of like a decade, and then 2 years again, I've went from that scenario to I read 100 books a year, I write all the time, I've been a lecturer, so not only have I kind of went to the kind of edge of a career, but I've actually went back as an educator to train.
Yeah.
But I think that it also gives me that understanding and patience that, you know, I've always argued as a lecturer saying, if you can't teach it 6 different ways, you don't really truly understand it yourself. And you'll know that, having known me personally, that I'm very big on using like an analogy.
Yeah.
So I use analogies to kind of break down even some of the most complicated kind of topics. Because that is the way you explain things, but that's the exact way you would explain to a kid or someone that's trying to wrap their head around. Like, why would you try to make it more complicated, more fancy for the sake of it? But I've had people come to me and they said, like, look, my brother couldn't be a web designer because he's dyslexic, and I'm thinking, I know it's like a spectrum, so you can be autistic, and then you can be like really sort of like high functioning autistic or struggling, but a lot of people don't understand what it's like for those people. You know, like noise can like trigger things, and like, you know, that person's hearing like an echo chamber inside their head. You know, I watched a video of a wee boy that had autism, and they were trying to show like why kids act up, right? So my oldest son's autistic, but it's like when he's like what I would class as high function, but that's actually a disadvantage because people think, oh, there's nothing wrong with him. He's just bad. Whereas you're like, no, it's not that. Whereas if it was more visible, like he was in a wheelchair or something, you would kind of get it more. But I watched this video, and the wee kid was in the equivalent of like a shopping centre, and it just showed you. So it was like the background noise, and we're going to Tesco. You know, that you hear all these conversations, but it was like getting louder and louder and louder in his head, and then he like screams, right? And it's like as if he's kicking off, and people are like, you shouldn't bring him in a shopping centre if he can't, but you know, all this kind of way, this is a restaurant, and you're like, right, I could slap the shit out of the people, right? But if you think about it, it's lack of understanding, so they don't get what that's like for that little kid. That little kid's scared, or they're kind of like, you know, they're getting deafened with all this kind of noise, and me and you are kind of thinking like, what's wrong? I don't get it. And you're going, I think society is now becoming more aware of it, but that means that probably in our generation and older than us, there's lots of like what I would call as high functioning disabled people that are in jobs, but it doesn't actually stop you. And I think that's like, I don't know, like the demographic of our listeners kind of thing, but you know, you'd have to hope that younger people will come across the content, and if you're kind of feeling in that scenario like, I'm stupid or I can't do this, there's always ways around things like that. You know what I mean? It's like some of the greatest minds are dyspraxic, which is like they struggle with numbers. Floyd Mayweather, one of the richest athletes in the world, you know, he can't read, but you know, he certainly knows these numbers, and he knows how to make a good amount of money. There's other ones, like even surprising ones, where I'm thinking I would expect that person to be
Albert Einstein. Albert Einstein was dyslexic
as well, but that's what I mean, there's loads of people, and like my theory with that was exactly what you said. I think that kind of like the film Daredevil, you know, he loses his eyes, and that's how he gets his ability to kind of hear better, and I'm not suggesting for a second you're dyslexic so you get like mutant powers, but you could look at it and say, right, I'm not good at writing, for example, so I would always explain something visually. So when you talk to me, I'll have tons of paper in front of me, I'll make it visual, but I can paint that picture in your head and describe that probably better than the majority of people that would kind of say, well, I'll kind of write it out and summarise it for you, but then I'm dependent on you being able to take that text and convert that into like an image, whereas I could model it in your head and you'd be going, yeah, no, I get it, so it's like a kind of pyramid with this, and it makes sense, like I get it, 2 buckets, and you know, apples, you've really simplified it to like the point where it's like a kind of, this is a red train, rather than a kind of, here's Hyperloop and how it works with all its fanciness, you know.
And it's essentially like, people just think differently, that it's just the way that they perceive the world is a little bit different, and if we try and help with that by giving them the tools and the techniques and the ways to do it, they become great and they have, you know, a great life. So, you know, Imogen, when we were in primary 4 and they sat us down and said, she's got dyslexia, I'm like, well, duh, we knew that, we told you that, and you were the ones that said we can't teach, we've got dyslexia. But at the same time, they weren't sure, they had to test her for autism, dyslexia, because they weren't sure, they had to get an occupational therapist.
I think that's the thing, is there's so many different things you can have. So it's like processing disorder is another one. So you could have like, right, 2 and 2 is 4, right, and it's like a kind of, I'm not getting it. You're like, you stupid, right? But that's not it. It's like they need more time to digest what you're saying. And you do see that in business and in life. Like people are processors, like they need to kind of reflect.
Yeah.
Like that's a lot of information. I need the time to reflect. Now, never has anybody said that to me and I've went, that's ridiculous, you need time to reflect, you should just get it like that and click my fingers. Because some people have like a mental dexterity, they're very fast at picking up a concept, whereas other people are kind of like, they struggle with it. Because I would say if we were having a conversation, I would usually be quite quick to kind of get the business model of it in my head, but I'm generally quite slow at learning, and I don't know if that's to do with reading or it's to do with something else, but I generally learn by like sort of like smothering the topic. So I'll read like 10 books on the topic, I'll watch 16 YouTube videos, I'll listen to podcasts, I'll basically surround it by as many kind of ways of thinking as I can, and then I imagine it kind of like a big jigsaw. Like, have you ever seen one of those pictures where it's all like fragments on these kind of stands, but if you like look at it from a certain angle, it forms a picture. That's the way I envisage how I learn, is like it'll be there, it's elusive, it's not quite there, I'm not really 100% sure, but see, I'll eventually get to something and it'll like click, and it's like the Matrix where you're just like, I get this, I get exactly how this works, and at that point generally I have deeper knowledge than other people that have studied it, because all the kind of stuff kind of ties back together. It's like you've kind of learnt that central truth about what you're teaching.
And so that's what I was going to say, like with the point with Imogen. So at the time of primary 4, so it kind of links some of this, she was at the reading age of a primary 1, so they were like, she's probably still at primary 1, you know, learning, where everybody's at primary 4. The last report that we got, she was already in primary 6, she was already at the level of primary 7, because she was given the tools. She was given like iPads to work on, a computer to work on, or yellow overlay to work on. So just by teaching her in a different way, she then went rapidly better than everybody else. So she was then higher than everybody else, and it's exactly what you kind of said yourself. You know, you're struggling in a certain sort of way, but actually then by giving them the tools and putting them in an environment, you then become really, really good. And that's where this whole kind of neurodiversity, and if businesses actually take the time to learn about what this could actually happen. So if somebody's got Asperger's or dyslexia, what can I do to support them in their business? And now there's people that, you know, I spoke to this guy a couple of weeks ago at an event, and he was really into it basically because his daughter has Asperger's and was really struggling to get a job, and he was, you know, quite, you know, obviously quite kind of passionate and emotional about it, and likewise I am as well, like, because I know that once, you know, Imogen goes into the working world, she might get a boss that doesn't understand, and is like, oh, she's not good enough because
can't do the job,
she can't,
rather than looking at
and actually looking, going, wow, I could actually have an amazing skill here, because they're an excellent storyteller, but they might actually have to tell the story by like using the voice a thing on their phone, where you can actually talk into your phone and it writes the content for you. Lots of ways that you can do that.
But you kind of mentioned it yourself there though, Mark, so like if she was like primary 4 and was like the reading ability to a P1, eventually it ages out anyway. So let's see, if you think about it, right, so most adults, like, these stats scare me, right, so as a lecturer it actually really scares me, but once people leave school, most people stop studying. Like the vast majority of people, like, I think it's like one book a year or something for the average American. Like, even that's like an unusual thing. So to read multiple books or self-develop or do courses or do things, it's very, very low percentile of the population. So even like someone that is struggling, they can catch up and get ahead of where that is. So like, if you continue, you know, I can't remember, is it Mark Twain that said that? A man who can read but does not read has no advantage over a man who can't. And it's like that kind of continuous, like, right, you continue to learn. So you work, not only work ways around it, but you kind of find like clever techniques of the, I know I'm not particularly good at this, but I'm not going to let that hold me back. I'm going to, you know, I'll just proof it 3 or 4 times, or, you know, if I need to work an hour later to make sure it's done, and, you know, that kind of way that my boss is happy with it, then that's what I'll do.
And so like on that point about using people to their strengths and obviously finding empowerment from defects, is like, there was an example of the guy that I was speaking to a couple of weeks ago. So the person had Asperger's, but they've put them into some sort of like data science kind of coding role, and because of the way that they think and the way they are, they're like so good. They're like the best that ever like you can do it, because they're really, really good at that skill. And what would you rather have? You know, somebody that's just a general guy that takes his time, than somebody that's like zoned in, coding away, like really, really good at it.
I'll take the guy with the disability any day.
Any day.
But I've already looked at it that way. You're thinking that's maybe not a front of house kind of client role. Like, I don't think they could do client management, but as a developer, my God, they're amazing.
Yeah.
That could even be, it's not a disability, but it can be like they struggle with English. But they're amazing at coding. You know, that's the way I think people have to look at it. Is look at is it Kim Peek? And it's like, I think it's Kim Peek. It might not be, but I think it's a name like that. He reads a book where his left eye takes a photo of the left page and his right eye takes a photo of the right page. So literally, he looks at the page and then he turns like that. It's like something like Johnny Five. Yeah. Right. See that short circuit? Yeah. He's like, knowledge, like flying through the book, right? So he'll read the entire book in like 12 minutes. And then you could say, you know, what was the founding fathers agreement on such and such? And he'd be like, you know, and he could read you the full page. Wow. And then he could tell you the section, the paragraph, the page number. So his retention was like insane. Like this guy had a photographic memory. Yeah. Like not like he's good at remembering. This guy was like a photograph. Like he was reading it from his mind. But he couldn't tie his own shoes or function. Like he couldn't feed himself or dress himself. And you're thinking it's almost like his brain's too advanced for the body to kind of function. You know what I mean? Almost as if it's like lopsided. Yeah. The mental skill is where all the resources have went, and then the body's been deprived of what is.
Because even if it is, you know, it's not dyslexia or whatever. Even in a staff member, for instance, right? So you've got somebody that can't write content. You know, is like just grammatically can't get it, or has to learn, but is amazing at designing websites and can design loads and loads of websites. What would you get them doing?
Exactly. You would go here, you do the blog. You know, it's like kind of torture. Like,
you know, and then you've got people who's kind of brought in neurodiversity, like that you could actually do the same sort of thing. You can say, right, that's your job, that's what you're going to do. Yep. And then you will get so much output. You'll get so much output from that. And I generally, it's something that I find obviously is quite deep because of my daughter, and I probably didn't fully understand it and fully didn't, the ins and outs of it essentially. And then once you start actually going into it, and neurodiversity is a big thing. It doesn't just need to be dyslexia, dyspraxia. Can even be mental health, ADHD. Just being a different way of being. And actually, now as a business owner, I am definitely opened my eyes up to it. And, funnily enough, I remember I interviewed somebody who was partially blind for a content role. So like, how are they going to do? So that they basically you can still write by typing away. They were just partially blind, something like that. But she was like a doctor in English or something. Oh, really? So like a doctor, so she's got the PhD in English. Kind of way, So I was like, you're coming, you're coming. I still
do it. Have you ever heard of that guy Thiago? Is it Passion for Social or something like that? I think
I've not met him, but
I think he runs like an agency, but it's like everybody in the agency has like a recognised disability, like exactly that, like they're blind or deaf or disabled in some way. But it's like looking at it in exactly that way. They take the value of what the person's skills are, and then they kind of say that, and it's like exactly that way. It's like a blind content writer. Yeah. But she's brilliant because you're not going to get any more sort of visually sort of like what you call it, inspiring text than someone that kind of is blind. Like that's their medium. That's how they communicate. It's brilliant.
It's absolutely brilliant. The fact that she'd actually got into content and got into English and things like that, being partially blind, is massively that's empowerment.
Look at Stephen Hawking.
Exactly.
That's like a prime example of that. It's like you could look at it and say, right, life's over. Yeah. Which I think sadly too many people probably do that. And then he's like kind of like, right, I'll focus on my mind. Yeah. My mind is the kind of tool. It's the one thing I have left, and even while I still have it, I'll do that. And it's like it was becoming more and more and more informed as it went on. Yeah. And the guys wrote multiple books, huge scientific kind of progression, and you're thinking, But by other kind of rationales, it'd be like, oh, we need to hire him.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, why not?
Yeah.
You know, it's so short-sighted in the sense of like that's not going to help the company. And you're like, well, how would it not?
Yeah.
You
And
know?
I think there'll be a lot of entrepreneurs out there, and it's funny, like, I spoke to my in-laws about this, and when it was all happening with Imogen and all that, there was so many people like that in school, but they got called the stupid kid, and then they went on in their life,
They're
and,
actually
all,
right.
and they're but they still think even to this day that they're probably stupid, or they're probably never self-diagnosed. So I mean, I would say to any business owner or people that are in business to go out there and try and get diagnosis if there is, because like there's so many tools and there's so much out there that if you do get it, then you can go, actually I can now use this for my power, use this as a superpower and use this in a different way. I know there's definitely so many people out there, because I think it's even like a personal trainer I had, and he's doing social media posts, and you can see with the letters and things like moved about. I was like, he's definitely got dyslexia, but he's never ever come out, and he probably sees it as a weakness, and so I'm not going to tell people
the
this.
thing is, people kind of know what it means anyway, because it's like you get like the grammar police and the stuff like that. And like, that's not how you use a comma, or that's the wrong there, or that's the, and you're like, you know what the person meant, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, it could be worse. The guy could be talking with text speak, you know, R, U, like singular letters, and you know, XOXO and all this kind of stuff. Exactly. Like, it could be a lot worse. You know what the person means. So why? I can understand it in a book or something.
Yeah.
But a social media post, and like people are like, oh, that's a XYZ. And you're like, well, now you comment, you know, now you get involved.
Yeah.
But when it was like the person's like your family member, and they're trying to better themselves or build their company or get a job or whatever.
I find these people have probably been abused by their parents or something like that.
Oh, so
like, don't do this again.
That's it. Oh, you've used too many letters.
There's a comma missing.
Like Oxford comma. We had that. I can't remember the band. It's like Oxford comma. Have you heard that? It's like, who cares about Oxford comma? Don't need no high school drama. It's like that kind of like the comma in front of the and. So it's like not necessary, but there's like a massive debate about whether you should and shouldn't. You're like, mate, there's bigger things to worry about.
I know. But I find, because we've had this like in business, and some people, grammatically it's been incorrect. I mean, in a small way, and then some clients are like, I'm sorry, I'm a bit of a content Nazi, like I've got to kind of pick up on these things. But then they write an email that's got things grammatically wrong, and you're like, you can't say that. You can't say that in one breath, that you're a content Nazi, and then have your content wrong. You have to
I think the thing is, everybody makes mistakes. It doesn't matter how good you are, you make mistakes.
Exactly.
So it's an editing process.
But
you try to catch it through process rather than
and
like when I write my stuff, I try to like proof it, and ultimately I could look at a word that's clearly wrong, and everybody else might see it, and I'm like, and that's
essentially the process as well. So like I when I started off, I write content now, and I'd probably say I'm pretty good at writing content, but at the very start of my career, I was crap, but I never checked my work. And if you write fast and then just send it to the boss, and then they're going through the roof like, you can't write, you can't even spell and put these things together. But then just learned that there was a process to actually just check my work.
Grammarly, get Grammarly on your
But actually, there's another good one that I even say to staff is there's it's called natural reader, so it's like text to speech. So copy the text, you put it in there, and it speaks to you.
Yeah,
you just listen to it, right? Yeah. Just listen to it back. But what will happen is if there's a funny word,
it'll say it weird.
It'll say it weird, and you go, oh.
I stole that off one of the content writers that worked for us. She kind of started and said, how do you proof your work? And that's what she said she did. She she basically transcribes it, and then it reads it back. I thought, what a brilliant way of working out if you said, now obviously won't catch things like there, like that kind of way, but it would catch like a kind of, it couldn't work that word out, so clearly that word's spelt incorrectly. Do you know what I mean?
That was good. So wrapping it up there, what would you be your business belter today?
So business belters would be a bit hard for this one just because of the kind of topic, but what I would really advise people to do is, don't look at it as holding you back in your life, and don't allow something like that to kind of go, right, I can't do it because I'm stupid, or it takes me too long to learn. There's lots of people that are in this world that have some form of disability that went on to do amazing things. I would take inspiration for that, make it your superpower, and kind of move forward with it. If you're on the other side of the fence, I would try to encourage like more tolerance and understanding that the fact is these aren't new things. We might be learning more about them as things progress, and we start to understand more about how people think, or disabilities are not as easy to identify. But obviously that is a thing. It's not something that's just happened over a couple of months. It's been there for a long time. So. And we all still function and move forward as a society. So
it's absolutely no. I would concur. I would agree with you in every sort of way with that as well. And probably just kind of add in, like, neurodiversity. If you are a little bit different, don't see it as a weakness. You generally do have strengths in elsewhere, and use your strengths. Because there's other ways to kind of learn and perfect your skills in other areas. So don't ever kind of take it as a weakness, and try and like empower yourself to use yourself to the strength. So that's what I would kind of say. So just wrapping it up there, and thank you very much for joining in. So obviously we talked about finding empowerment from defects. If you have your own story, we'd love to kind of hear it. If you've got neurodiversity, or the kids have got neurodiversity, it's a great topic. I feel that it's something that's not spoke about a lot, and I feel that people should kind of open up about it more and really get that awareness out there, because us as business owners, we should be aware of it when we're interviewing new staff. And for people that are students that feel that they're fear to go into a role, they shouldn't feel that. They should feel that that they're the individual and they've got the strengths there. So as always, please subscribe, comment, and thank you very much. So it's a goodbye from me.
Goodbye, fam.
Thank you.
See you later, guys.